Welcome to Chapter 2 of Scarbo Knows with Kevin Skarbinski. I'm your host, Kevin Skarbinski, also known as Scarbo. And this edition is Sweet Hoops, Alabama, because basketball has never been this good, this strong, this deep in this state in the history of round ball since they first put up a peach basket, long before Charles Barkley dunked and broke a peach basket. Basketball has never, ever been as good as it is now. In fact, dare I say it, I don't know if this may be against the law, basketball is better than football in Alabama right now. But don't take my word for it. I brought receipts, okay? I brought some receipts as we get ready for March Madness, as we've already started, absolutely, last night. And thank you to Alabama State. I'm wearing black for the Hornets from Montgomery in the first four game. They throw, naturally, because it's Alabama, they throw a touchdown pass at the end of the game to beat St. Francis, make a layup, win the game, the first NCAA tournament victory of 2025, the first NCAA tournament victory in Alabama State history, and the 20th victory of the season for the Hornets. That makes, carry the one. That's 9 of the 10 Division I teams in Alabama that have won 20 or more basketball games this season. And of every state in the country, there's only one that's won more or has more teams that have won 20 games or more. That's California, the largest state. They have 11. Alabama has 9. How strong is that? Now let's look at who is in the NCAA tournament by state. Another way you can measure success across the board. And in these borders, 4 different teams are in the NCAA tournament, along with 4 from California, North Carolina, Tennessee, trailing only Texas. And by the way, Texas has 25 Division I teams. California has 26 Division I teams. So if you go by percentage, obviously, Alabama's batting average is a lot higher. That's a 400 batting average, 4 out of 10 heading to the NCAA tournament. You've got number 1 overall seed Auburn. You've got number 2 seed Alabama. You've got number 14 seed Troy. And you've got number 6, which plays Kentucky, by the way. Watch out, Wildcats. The Trojans and Tayton Connerway can play. And then you've got Alabama State. Just won its first game. They will play Auburn on Thursday in Lexington, Kentucky in the first round. But it's not just the NCAA tournament. There's another postseason tournament going on right now called the NIT, which is actually a year older than the NCAA tournament. And let's look at the number of teams by state that are in the NIT. There are 32 teams in that field. California, obviously, should be largest state. 7 teams in that field. Alabama, second with 4. And by the way, there's an asterisk there, and there should be. I don't know if you've heard about the complete travesty that the NIT managed to engineer by giving a bid to UC Riverside and excluding South Alabama after giving the bid to South Alabama, calling Coach Richie Riley, telling him they were in, telling him, yeah, go ahead, tell your players, which he did. An hour or so later, Richie gets a call back from the powers that be at the NCAA/NIT. And by the way, they're under the same umbrella, including the Sun Belt Commissioner, Keith Gill. South Alabama is in the Sun Belt, shared the regular season championship there. They call Richie back and say, oh, sorry, our bad. UC Riverside, which had been committed to the CBI, another postseason tournament, they were able to wriggle out of that one, and they want to play in the NIT. And so they completely pulled the rug out from every player, coach, staff member, fan of that program. Unfair, unprecedented, and unconscionable. And if there's any justice in the world, and it doesn't make up for the mistake, but UC Riverside played its first game in the NIT on Tuesday night. Lost by 39 points to Santa Clara. Well done, Santa Clara. So now let's look at the combination. Okay, all the teams from every state, how many did they send combined to the NCAA tournament and the NIT? How about California with 11 and Alabama right behind with 8? And like I said, if the NIT had done the right thing, California would only have 10. Alabama would have 9. So there is my stump speech on why this has been the greatest college basketball season in the history of the state of Alabama. And I've got a ride or die partner to help me make this point, someone who was one of the greatest high school players in this state's history at Winfield High School, who went on to play for Mississippi State and in his freshman season be a part of a team that went to the Final Four, the first and still only in state history. And now he is a basketball analyst, a basketball trainer, a basketball mind and enthusiast extraordinaire. Number 22, Bart Hyche. What's up, Bart?
Well, since you keep receipts, I thought I'd wear my prime glasses here for you. That I already had on, and we
Sweet.
didn't plan it like usual. Usually
Sweet.
partners are usually on the same page, right? But man, I love this name, Scarbo. This is good. This is where I like this space for you, partner. Because I like you being able to say what you want to say, when you want to say it, how you want to say it, especially when it talks about basketball. Because I know how much you love basketball, and you got famous right now about football and other things. But there's nobody better that would know that it's the greatest time in the history of Alabama high school or college, my friend Kevin Skarbinski. So I'm honored to join you today. Congratulations on the launch of the podcast.
Thank you, my man. I guarantee you, I am the only podcast whose background includes a basketball from Birmingham Southern. May that program rest in peace and that entire university rest in peace. And
Amen.
Samford University, which is playing in the NIT tonight after playing in the NCAA tournament last year with Bucky McMillan, who, of course, played at Birmingham Southern. That's my homage to the programs in this state that don't get the pub of Alabama and Auburn, and to a lesser extent, UAB. But they're doing great things. They did great things at Birmingham Southern. Dwayne Rebold, one of the great coaches in state history, won 2 national championships there on the NAIA level. Now he's a special assistant to Bucky McMillan at Samford. They're doing incredible things there. They won 20 games for the 4th straight year. Bart, how about this? How about Alabama State last night? How happy were you, Hornets? I guess I'm not the only person in this conversation that's been to the Acadome, Alabama A&M, and it was an unbelievable atmosphere. Bart,
I
you
love
got
the
me?
Acadome. I was sad when. Yeah, I got you. Can you hear me, man?
Yeah,
You
you're good.
good?
You're good. We got you.
Okay, yeah, I think that might be in a tough spot. Sorry, I tried to get still. Um, I love the Acadome. I love Alabama State. I was sad when the regional got taken away from the Acadome and Montgomery there for a brief stint, but now it's back. I was able to be there for the regional uh, tournament. Saw just a lot of good high school basketball. It's a great arena to watch high school basketball, but obviously college as well. Been some big time games there. I was happy for a couple of reasons. Coach Tony Madlock's pass and it's crossed time to time. He spent some time at Auburn. He was at Ole Miss. And just numerous stops along the way of a coaching career, and then gets the head job at Alabama State, has the opportunity for his son to play for him. My great friend Sydney Ball, who we're the same age, came out about the same time, and Sydney and I have always been in the same circles, man. And to see him land there, obviously played at UAB, was at UAB, left Andy Kennedy's staff, and then to get to Alabama State and have a more active role. Just basketball is healthy in Alabama, but nobody was really talking about the Hornets, Kevin. They kind of went through their SWAC season, and then they put it together at the right time. And I think a lot of that is the tournament experience that you saw from some of their coaching staff, head coaches, assistant coaches, and but to your point, how fitting is Alabama State winning on a Hail Mary football play to where everybody's going so fast to try to get the ball, everybody really kind of forgot to get it. And then just to see them make the basket and to watch it, and just there's something about being from Alabama and people not respecting us in basketball, and the graphics that you just showed, the statistics that you just showed. I mean, right now we should be tooting our horn about all these teams in the state, but Alabama State just kicked off exactly what we've been seeing in the state of Alabama. Wins.
Hey.
You just got to win, baby, and it don't matter how you win.
Hey, you talk about tooting the horn. I'm blowing the tuba, the clarinet, the trumpet, every member of the brass section you could think of. I am highlighting it.
What was that big one? The basset horn? The basset horn.
That's a little beyond my musical knowledge, so I'm not going to go there. But we've never seen anything like this. I mean, just look at that alone right there. Texas has 25 Division I teams.
Well, just the sheer numbers.
They got 5. They got 5. They should have more than Alabama. We got 4 out of 10. That's batting 400. That gets you in the Hall of Fame. In another sport that you're familiar with, that you were quite good at in high school, that you probably could have played professionally if you'd gone that direction.
I wish I had have, man. I probably wouldn't. My body would still hurt, but I might have had a better chance to continue my career. But this stat, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, we're going to talk about this later in the week on our radio show. Hopefully, I'm sure you won't mind. I'm going to retweet this because, look at the names that just got 2 in. Okay? Mm-hmm. Kentucky, Illinois, that's Chicago. I mean, there's all kinds of teams, Big Ten teams. Ohio, think about how many Division I programs are in the state of Ohio. It's crazy. It's a lot more than you would think, especially in
13, actually. They've got 13 D1 programs.
I just think that is interesting, but those are the type nuggets that only Scarbo can find. But I'm not surprised. I mean, we've seen this growth. You don't see it. You didn't see it in Mississippi after we went to the Final Four, and then Ole Miss raised their level to where they won a Western Division championship, Kevin. But in the state of Alabama, when Auburn went to the Final Four, basketball started to matter. And kids were like, wow, I'm watching my team play. I can do this. Well, Alabama follows that up with a Final Four. Not a Western Division championship twice in a row, a Final Four. Well, then all the levels are raised for every program. The transfers everybody's going to get. What Richie Riley did, you talked about the NIT, which I think is a complete debacle, but I love how he and my good friend Joel Urban, the AD, showed a lot of class and just not allowing that to take away from the season and what those kids did by hanging a banner, by winning the conference. But all of these programs, Tony Pujols had a chance to go to the tournament. He was right there, last game. And then UAH winning 30 games in Division II. What Wallace State is doing, even on the girls' side, Shelton, you've got basketball on the front of people's minds right now. And a lot of people, for the first time ever, are paying attention and saying, wait a minute, Auburn's number 1, Alabama's, I usually start after the Super Bowl. I'll start watching. Well, this year, people started watching a little bit earlier, man. And I think you bring in light to it. And then obviously now people from Alabama are getting on board with what everybody nationally has been saying since December about basketball in the state of Alabama. It's alive and well.
By the way, was that your Winfield accent? Is that your Walker County accent? What was that? Where did that accent come from that you lapsed into there for a moment?
That one actually would be from down around Glen Allen or Bazemore, in Fayette County, okay. On the edge of Fayette and Marion County, if anybody knows where that's at.
Well, hey, listen, I love what you said, that a lot of times people nationally understand and respect what's happened here in basketball. And this isn't the first time basketball has been good. It's the first time it's been this good across the board. Shout out to Wimp Sanderson and Sonny Smith and Gene Bartow. Gene Bartow, you talk about someone who was more respected and beloved nationally than he was here in Birmingham. And not that people here didn't respect and love him, but I had the privilege once to go to a Memphis Grizzlies game with Gene after he'd retired. He was like the mayor.
Oh
He
yeah.
knew everybody in that arena. He knew them by name. He was working for the Grizzlies part-time in the front office. He was a friend of Jerry West's. And to see the regard that people held him in, I mean, it made me feel good for him that he was getting the respect that he had earned. I mean, leaving UCLA to start a basketball program in Birmingham, Alabama, as he did. Are you kidding me? And the success that he had, he was a big part of getting people excited, saying, hey, guess what? March Madness is a thing, and it can be a thing here.
I remember I was recruited by Murray Bartow. Carter Long was recruited out of Winfield by Gene Bartow, and that was my first real, I guess, initiation to UAB. It was always just the third school in the state. Oh yeah, and by the way, Auburn used to play them on the Friday night before the Iron Bowl. That's what I knew about UAB,
And
right?
fill the BJCC arena with
All day,
16,000 people.
absolutely, and then right over to Legion Field. I remember we would you couldn't tape stuff back then. So I remember we would always have a Winfield High School football game, and somehow Daddy would be listening to the Auburn UAB game right at the same time. Those memories of just when you're a kid and football and basketball coinciding, overlapping. But when Carter Long went to UAB, I got to go watch him and just kind of see that UAB program. And then I think when they built the arena, that helped UAB even more. Murray was there. They continued to build the success. But then you look at Andy Kennedy, who's a legacy at UAB, who played in the program, who comes back home and almost got to the tournament this year, but it was a one bid league. A lot of the big time players that you're seeing in the UAB type leagues, they're in the SEC now. They're in the Big Ten now. If you have a good year, you somewhat kind of move on. So I think UAB is in a very unique situation when it comes to the portal because all of these teams, like in the state of Alabama, people know who they are. Like the UAB name carries weight outside of the SEC. That's because of Gene Bartow. It's because of guys like Andy Kennedy and like he's 3 out of 5. I mean, what was his tournament records? Like 11-3 now or something in the
Yes.
CSA tournament. That's
In conference
unbelievable.
tournaments, Andy Kennedy is 11-3 in his 5 years at UAB. And he's played in 4 straight conference tournament championship games
Yeah.
and gone 2-2 in those. That's
Um,
insane.
it's insane, and like I expect them to reload and be back next year as well. But like to the whole point of like I think UAB has always been a very important part of Alabama basketball in general because they're always kind of that checks and balances of like, if you're not recruiting like you should, Salim London's going to go to UAB. If you're not thinking about taking care of these state, like those are the type stories and situations that like tying in high school to college. And I just feel like UAB's always held Auburn and Alabama a little bit accountable in basketball. And so it's a three-headed monster, not just a two-headed monster.
That's well said. And by the way, I'm still shaking my head. The AP released its All-American teams yesterday. They had a first team of 5, a second team of 5, a third team of 5, and then 12 honorable mentions. And they do it based on voting. The guys and girls who vote in the AP poll, they also vote for these All-American teams.
Yeah.
So naturally, there were 2 unanimous selections on the first team, Janai Broome and Cooper Flagg. Mark Sears was also on the first team. And amazingly, Janai Broome is the first AP All-American, first team All-American in Auburn history. And Mark Sears, we're going to test your trivia here. Mark Sears is only the second AP first team All-American in Alabama history. Who was the first?
Hollywood?
No, it was not Hollywood Robinson. I think he was a second or third team, if I
I know he
recall.
was something.
Yeah, he was, but he wasn't first team.
Who was
You don't have to go back that far. You're
Sexton?
going, no, not even that far.
Who am I missing, bro?
The team that was, and how about this first stat? The last 3 years, the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament twice has come from the
Oh,
state
man,
of
you put
Alabama.
me
In
on the spot.
2023, it
Now,
was
look,
Alabama. Who was the star player for Alabama in 2023 as a freshman? He went one and done.
Davison.
Brandon
Absolutely.
Miller.
Calhoun, Alabama. Oh, Brandon
Brandon Miller,
Miller.
man.
My bad.
Brandon Miller.
Look, listen,
Brandon Miller.
listen. I'm trying to forget how good Alabama was then, and I was sitting here racking my brain. Who's this? Who's it? If you would have said
Well,
starting
wait a
in the
second.
league right now, one of the most underrated players in the
Yes,
league
one of
right
the
now, I
bright
would get it.
young players in the NBA. Yes, but
Well,
let me
he's.
finish.
Go ahead.
Let me finish this thought and get your thought. So, Sears and Broome, first team, deserved. Okay,
Yep.
Walter Clayton Jr. So 2 of the 5 from Alabama, 3 of the 5 from the SEC, which is an indication of how good the league has been. And we're going to talk more about the SEC in a couple of minutes. But not on the first team, not on the second team, not on the third team. Not one of those 27 players was named Yaxel Lindeborg from UAB. Not even as an honorable mention. The dude who just put up a 30-20 game in the semifinals of the AAC tournament to get UAB to the championship game against Memphis. He's played in 6 AAC tournament games, Bart, in 2 years. He has 6 double-doubles. He leads the entire country in double-doubles this year. I forget, it was 23, 22, 23, somewhere in there. He's not even an honorable mention All-American. That's where I think the bias towards the power conferences, the bigger names, can sometimes hurt an unbelievable player like Yaxel Lindeborg, who, if he decides to go this year, he has 1 year of eligibility left. He'll be in the league. He's going to be drafted if he goes, probably second round.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic when you have a talent like that. That's just a double machine, but that can actually get the ball off the rim and take it the other end and create. I love it when he gets a rebound, gets an outlet pass, and then you see him sprint the floor to the other end into a position to where his teammates are going to get him the ball. Right? I love, and you got to have guards on your team that understand, like, the coach wants him to touch the ball every trip, right? And I think in that tournament, especially late in the year, you saw Andy Kennedy, you saw the UAB guards make it a priority to make sure that he got a touch, that Lindeborg got a touch every single possession, right? And that's one of these things you see it all the time, to where guys just get lost in the game, especially in high school. A star player just lost in the game because it's not a big enough priority to make sure they get a touch and let everything go through them. But it's unique. I think he's actually even longer. He looks, but he's sneaky long and looks long, right? If the ability to step out ever really develops to where he can step out and knock down shots, I think getting to that 3-point line would be a thing. But the one thing I think NBA scouts really are going to like about him, or they do like about him, after actually we were talking about him the other night after the 30-20 game, an NBA scout buddy of mine and he can make free throws. He can make free throws in bunches. I mean, in that, for a big, it's probably a 4, maybe a 3. But the other thing is he can guard multiple positions and get some shot blocks against wing players. So he's probably one of the most underrated players in the entire country that nobody's going to really know anything about this unless UAB gets to the NIT Finals.
Absolutely. Well said, my friend. Okay, let's talk SEC. Now,
Woo,
you
let's do
played
it.
in it. You've been a fan of it. You grew up as an Auburn fan. You played at State. You've been to the NCAA tournament. You've been to the Final Four. 14 teams in the bracket. Does that blow your mind the way it does me?
Every time I hear it, I always think about when my granddaddy used to say, "Do what? Do what? How many?" I mean, you before you believe it. But it started, but the reason is all because of the preseason. Period. And did Auburn peak too early, Kevin? I don't know. We'll see. I think it's great motivation for Bruce Pearl and the way he coaches, that people are doubting his team that everybody said for the whole year till the last 2 weeks. So you and I were on Florida a little bit earlier than most people, but Auburn's not looked at as the best seed. They're not our number 1 seed, but there's going to be more people, with Florida in their bracket. So that shows you how top heavy the league is. You got Alabama. What's going to happen with Nelson? They're still dangerous. I think this is a different Tennessee. I really do. I've got them in my Final Four. I'm not always been the biggest on Rick Barnes, but I'm seeing some different things in how they attack matchups. Can Gainey be a third scorer? Can Military? And if both of those guys give you that, and they can stay with that 8-man rotation, not get in foul trouble, Tennessee's a problem. Below that, I think all these other teams are going to be running into those 4 teams at some point. And you might have somebody down toward the end of the line. Don't sleep. I know it sounds crazy, but like the games that would scare me if I'm Alabama or Florida, it's when I catch Oklahoma in the second round if I'm Florida. If I catch Vandy in the second round if I'm Alabama. Somebody that knows me. Somebody that gets through, sneaks through, and I've beaten them twice, maybe 3 times, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit here and relax. You're going to see some SEC matchups. I had predicted that you'll see definitely 4, maybe 5 SEC teams in the final 8. I don't think it works out as well as I thought it would with the bracket that way. 4 definitely. And I've got 3 SEC teams in my final 4. But when you talk about 14 teams, the reason why it's like this, there's 2 teams that were the lowest in the SEC in NIL money. It was LSU and South Carolina. LSU's going to commit this year. LSU's going to be that team next year that makes a jump because they're going to go into this portal. They're going to learn from what they did, and you'll see some fluctuation in different teams that don't commit and continue growing because these numbers ain't going nowhere until it's capped, Kevin. You got to keep going to the same wells and creating new ones. The money, the facilities, what Sankey did years ago, 14 teams, what you never see again, any conference, my opinion, ever have an 86% winning percentage in the preseason like the SEC did. And that's kind of why it made it so hard for all these other teams to catch up. And these SEC teams would get in if they won the right games. But Kevin, think about this as the last point in the SEC. Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, for sure. Mississippi State almost had to win games down the stretch. It's really on the roll of them just to get in. That shows you the depth of the league. Bottom tier of your league has must-win situations, and they just keep delivering. That's what really showed me the strength of the SEC down the stretch.
Okay, I want to focus a little bit more deeply on Auburn and Alabama. You made an interesting point about Auburn in a unique position as the nominal number 1 overall seed that a lot of people don't think should be the number 1 overall seed. They're questioning whether they played their best basketball in January and February, whether they peaked too soon, as you said, whether they're headed for another second-round collapse like they had in 2022 with Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler, and they got run out of the gym by Miami's guards as a 2 seed. So you played for a coach in Richard Williams who carried the largest chip on his shoulder, or one of the largest chips on his shoulder of maybe any coach I've ever been around. And I love Richard Williams. I think you talk about underrated guys who did a fantastic job. I think Richard's right there. But he was a motivator, man. And I still remember when you guys won the Elite 8 game to go to the Final Four, and they handed you guys hats that said Mississippi. Not Mississippi State, Mississippi. And it was the first thing Richard Williams said in the post game. Forget the fact that it was the first time Mississippi State had ever advanced to the Final Four. Can that kind of edge, that kind of anger, inner anger, if you want to call it that you guys played with at Mississippi State under Richard Williams, does Auburn have that little extra motivational edge now because they got the greatest honor you can get going into the tournament as the 1 overall seed, but they're getting dissed left and right?
I love the way you phrased that question. It's kind of, can you get your mojo back? Yeah, they're that good. They can. Everybody's talking about the Louisville matchup. I saw what North Carolina did last night. ACC still doesn't impress me that much. I actually think Creighton in the Big East is a better conference, and I think Creighton's going to beat Louisville. And to me, it doesn't matter who they play. in that second round. They're going to win the first round game, but that second round game, I would not want to be that team. Catching Bruce. All these games they lost at the end of the year didn't really matter. They had already clinched. Yes, they matter. Every game matters. When you see the scouting report and you see the matchups, you got to go play you want to play. You know, but how motivated were they really to play those last couple of 2 or 3 games? Except really Alabama was more motivated to play at Auburn and beat Auburn on their home court than Auburn was motivated to protect their home court against Alabama. That's a problem if you're Bruce Pearl. They didn't play bad in the tournament. It wasn't like that. Tennessee was a team that was out to prove something still. Auburn was still just playing as the hunted, as the number one. Everybody's coming after you. Now you get to regroup. Now you get to go back to being you. But here have been the constants all year. There's a couple of things missing from this Auburn team the last few weeks. Broome, when he's healthy, obviously is the head of the snake that you've got to make sure you're dealing with him, and it's really hard to do that. Cardwell defensively is definitely a problem. Not going to give you a lot of offense, but he can guard guards. You know, in all these teams that are going to play Auburn, you better not let your guard think he's going to go score on Cardwell, because that dude takes that challenge seriously every single trip. Kelly 6'6". Baker Mazara 6'6", 6'7". These guys on the perimeter are hard to deal with. And then Denver Jones may be the best defending point guard in the SEC that we have talked about in the last 10 years. Experience, Final Four pedigree from Jones. Here's 3. I mentioned one of them, but Baker Mazara's edge, with all the antics, with all the technicals, with all didn't get to start, they got to get his moxie back, because he's a problem on both ends. I need to see him, whatever setting it is, I need to see the old Baker Mazara, under control, but playing with that fire. The 2 guys that have been missing to me are Pettiford and Chaney Johnson. I mean, Chaney Johnson early in the year, Kevin, was unguardable down there in the post, especially over his left shoulder, right? Well, he's been scouted now. He doesn't go as well to his left. The matchup is being kind of taken away. But I feel like Chaney Johnson on the offensive glass, in certain matchup touches against teams that haven't seen Auburn, he can put up 15 and 8 on you in a heartbeat. And then Pettiford, what he did when Jodi Broome was out, that 4-game stretch, he played superb, was coming into his own, kind of hit a little freshman wall a little bit, especially defensively. And feel like he's always trying to make a play when he's in there. Sometimes that's what freshmen do. If you can get the Baker Mazara mojo, that's when Auburn was rolling. It's when they had all that, just success with all those guys. You know why, Kevin? Because they were so deep. Depth matters. You saw Florida destroy everything in their path because they just kept bringing waves of guys, especially bigs. The only thing that scares me about Auburn is if they get in foul trouble in the post. They're vulnerable if that happens. Auburn to run through these first 2 games, then we'll be sitting there talking about their Sweet 16 matchup, which I can't wait for it if it's Michigan. I think that could be a game of the tournament if Auburn and Michigan get to that Sweet 16 game.
All right. I don't disagree with any of that. I think we're going to see the Auburn that we saw for 95% of this season. And I think they can't wait to get to Lexington. They can't wait to get on that floor. Especially now, look, Alabama State's going to be so overmatched in that game, that first round game. Yeah. But in that, once they get to the round 2, I would be shocked if we saw a repeat of what happened against Miami in 2022 or what happened against Yale last year in the first round. I would be absolutely stunned. All right, so let's talk. Before we get out of here, let's talk about Alabama. And obviously, Grant Nelson's health is a big question going into this. It seems like he'll be able to play, may not play in that first round game. I don't think that's an issue. The second round game, you said, you get Vandy. Vandy played with them in Tuscaloosa. Vandy can hit the 3. They like to play the way Alabama likes to play. I still don't think that's going to be the team that knocks them out. If we get to Alabama Duke in the Elite 8, what happens? And I think we may have just lost Bart. Hope he didn't drive off the road. But that's the question to me, is going to be what happens when Alabama gets to Duke. And I've said this, and I will say it, and I will say it again, until that night, until that game materializes, which I believe it will. Cooper Flagg is not going to be close to 100% a single minute in this NCAA tournament. And all you have to do to understand that is flash back to Janai Broome, the severe ankle injury that he suffered against South Carolina. It took Janai Broome a long time to get close to 100% again. I'm not sure he's there now. Cooper Flagg is not getting to 100%, Bart, and that's what I was just saying. Cooper Flagg's not going to be close to 100% in this tournament after that severe ankle injury he suffered in the ACC tournament. So when Alabama gets to Duke, can Alabama beat Duke in your mind?
I don't look. I really want to go on record as saying this, but I just at my heart, I got too many bulldog growls in my heart when it beats. If I really said it out loud, but I love the matchup for Mississippi State against Duke with a hurt Cooper Flagg and another starter out. Duke ain't got a point guard, right? Cooper Flagg masks a lot of things for Duke. Shot blocking, defensively being able to guard 3-4 positions, just length offensively and being able to get your shot, get to a free throw line whenever you want to. All those things. Whether it's Baylor or Mississippi State, I want to see Duke in that second round game. But like from a Bulldog standpoint, yeah, they ain't seen us, and they ain't seen a Christians type defense. Some injuries, crowd gets behind it. I'll be there in Raleigh.
Josh Hubbard
But
goes off
you
the way he
expect Duke to
can.
take Hub goes off. You know, you got guys like Sean Jones coming in giving 8.6 rebounds, 4 steals, 3 blocks. You know, just everybody contributing. But if Duke gets through and gets down and gets to Alabama, I don't think we're going to see that game, Kevin. I think one of those teams is going to lose before they get there. I think it's going to be Alabama. I personally, I don't like the matchup if they play St. Mary's in the second round, to be very honest with you. I think Alabama fans need to be pulling for Vandy because St. Mary's will slow you down, and they are big, and they can really limit your possessions, especially if you start throwing that thing up in the stands like Alabama does at times. But if we were to see the Alabama-Duke game, I think it's going to be somewhat contrasting styles. Duke, yeah, they can go score. Yeah, they can. But Duke wants to big boy you and really destroy you in the half court defensively with just getting stops. Alabama has so many possessions when you hadn't played against that type of game. I don't think Duke's a good matchup for Alabama at all. But for some reason, I'll tell you this. Neither one of these teams can win without their guy, right? Grant Nelson's health is as important as Cooper Flagg's is because of how versatile he is defensively and offensively in Nate Oates' system, right? So I can't really trust either one of these teams to go all the way into the Final Four until I see them being healthy. And I know you can't really, that's not really fair to people trying to fill out brackets, but
Yeah.
I'll be able to tell you a whole lot more about Duke and Alabama after this weekend.
Well, here's another reason why I would not put Duke in the Final Four, and I'm still working on my bracket. I haven't quite finalized it yet. Look at these teams in the SEC. Look at Auburn. Look at Alabama. Look at Florida. Look at Tennessee. Veteran after veteran after veteran. Some of these guys played at mid-majors. The guys that Todd Golden brought in at Florida, your Walter Claytons from Iona, Elijah Martin from FAU. He's got Final Four experience from a couple of years ago. But these guys have seen it all. Janai Broome, there's nothing on a college basketball court Janai Broome can see that he hasn't already seen. And so many guys on that roster can say the same thing. Duke is not in that position. Duke has not been on the edge of elimination in an NCAA tournament with these guys because so many of them are new. That's why I think, I don't know who it's going to be. Could be Alabama. Could be somebody before that. Could be Mississippi State. They're going to get in a game.
Arizona.
Like the Georgia Tech game
Arizona.
in the their very first game in the ACC tournament when Cooper Flagg went down. Georgia Tech gave them all they wanted. And by the way, shout out Jacksonville State, which ran Georgia Tech out of the building in Atlanta last night in the NIT. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
But you're just saying, but like Arizona's sitting there in that 4 seed, right? They're sitting right there with two guys. Love's been in the tournament, obviously played in a championship game. Bradley played at Alabama, high-level player, and they've got some interior presence. Tommy Lloyd has been there. Arizona at times in that bracket should scare Duke because at times Arizona was playing at a high level as anybody in the country for 3 or 4 games throughout the season. So you catch that lightning in a bottle, one game to if Arizona is making perimeter shots, they can play with and beat anybody anytime except maybe a Florida. I still, Kevin, somebody's going to have to beat the Gators, man. And they're going to have to either play really bad or something. Because I think there's a gap. I think there's a gap like there was last year with UConn.
Really? You putting this Florida team in that same class with the UConn team last year that beat everybody by double figures. Alabama came closer than anyone to staying with them and playing with them for a good while before the Huskies ran away. But so really, that's high praise for the Gators.
What's going to happen when Florida gets out of conference? What's going to happen when Florida gets out of conference? It's like 6A dropping down to play 2A.
Hey, you can say that for a bunch of teams in the SEC. You can say it for Auburn. You can say it for Alabama. You can
11-3 is my prediction. 11-3, 10-4 at worst. At worst. Because I just think there's going to be this is not a SEC bite. This is a basketball person watching basketball saying, these teams are longer. Missouri's a lot more physical than Drake. Like, that's my favorite game for the SEC's Missouri.
Yeah.
Because I know they ain't played well, but they've been playing SEC teams.
Everybody's picking Drake.
14 top hardest schedules in the country.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see. But it's a good time to be walking into the tournament if you're an SEC fan. And I'm pulling for all the SEC teams. I actually think Ole Miss could be, we didn't talk about it much. I think Ole Miss is draw. I think Ole Miss could be a Sweet 16 team.
I like it. How about whoever asked the question? Who's the dude who asked the question of Chris Beard about and used the word fraud about this Ole Miss team? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What are we even doing here?
He's the wrong one to ask that.
He actually handled it with an unusual level of decorum.
He did.
Chris Beard. All right, Bart. Listen, you and
decorum and Chris Beard. I didn't think I'd hear that today.
Yeah, it's in the same sentence. Didn't have that on your bingo card, did you? All right. Look, you and I could talk hoops all day long into the night, but let's kind of wrap this up. Give me your Final Four. Give me your national champion, and tell me why.
I think that Auburn has the hardest path to get to the Final Four, but I like Auburn. I don't trust Michigan State down there in the bottom of the bracket. I've got them going out early. I actually like Marquette in the final late in that bracket. But I like Auburn. I'm going to right now I've got Duke in mind, but I'm really tinkering with Arizona. So I haven't finished mine yet as well, but it'll probably be one of those two. I like Tennessee, Kevin. I like them to go to the Final Four. I think they'll struggle in the first game, but I think I see some different things in their personnel, how they're guarding, what they're running, the belief. I talked to some big Tennessee boosters when I was up in Nashville, and they feel like it's kind of their time. And I just think it's a different Tennessee team. So I've got Tennessee as well, and then Florida, of course. I've got Florida winning, playing Tennessee in the national championship game, rematch of the SEC tournament final, and Florida. Only reason I've got Tennessee in there is because Auburn ain't over there. But I think Florida, Tennessee, and I'll take Florida to win the national championship.
All right. Listen, that is entirely reasonable, and not just as someone who lives in SEC country, played in the SEC, watches the SEC very closely, loves his Bulldogs, pulls for Chris Jans and company. Totally reasonable to make those picks. I'm going to go you one better. And maybe it's because I've spent too much time talking to Garth Glissman, the assistant commissioner for basketball in the SEC, who's been he hasn't been there long, but he's helped become an architect of what SEC teams are doing. The revenue, the effort they're putting into basketball greater than ever at more places than ever. Some places could pick it up, as you mentioned earlier, but I've spent some time around Garth. Very impressive. Maybe I've spent too much time around you. Saw you play in the Final Four, covered you going into the Final Four. I've said this before. My first year as a beat writer for the Birmingham News, I saw Auburn go to the Elite Eight with Chuck Person, Frank Ford, Gerald White,
Yeah,
Jeff
lost to
Moore,
Louisville.
Chris Morris. You were just a tot then. And
John Kaler.
the last guy to hit a shot to beat Kentucky in Rupp Arena for Auburn in 1988.
Rupp.
And by the way, this whole
Yeah.
idea that Auburn is somehow going to be in danger if it plays Louisville in the second round of Rupp Arena. Louisville was 0-4 against the SEC this year. They got run by Tennessee. They got run by Ole Miss. And they lost in Rupp Arena, where Auburn ran Kentucky out of the building. So, sorry, Louisville ain't beating Auburn. I don't care if it's in Louisville. I don't care if it's in the Yum Center. They are not beating Auburn if they get to the second round, and I don't think they will. I think Ty Davis and Creighton are going to win that first round game. But I've got not one, not two, not three, 4 SEC teams. Count them: 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Final Four.
You did it.
I did it. I'm committed to the bit, but it's not a bit. It's like you said, observation. It's study. It's history. It's a little bit of intuition. And I think we're going to see a different order than semifinal Saturday at the SEC tournament. I think we're going to see Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee. And because I said it the day the season began, I'm going all the way. The
Auburn,
ultimate
Alabama.
IBOB, part 3, call it Armageddon. Auburn, Alabama in the national championship game, fittingly at the home of the Alamo. And the Tigers cut down the final nets. This time, Janai Broome has the last shot in regulation. And this time, he doesn't shoot the fadeaway. This time, he takes it to the goal and he scores to give Auburn its first national championship in basketball. It has to happen. It has to happen that way.
If that happens, you're going to be like, this will be like the 1965. If I were the devil, like when he predicted what was going to happen the next 35 years. This is Scarbo's basketball prediction. Because here's the thing. It's logical. I mean, you can make that argument. Very easily that, like, hey, Auburn can beat Florida. Absolutely. I totally agree with that if that game happens. Alabama can outshoot everybody and guard well enough and rebound well enough to get to the final game. If we saw an Auburn-Alabama final, I mean, that is the perfect cap to the greatest basketball season any of us have ever seen in the state, obviously.
So that's the only way for it to end. So I'm either going to be Nostradamus or Nostradamus. I'm not sure which. There's no in between. I'm going all the way, Bart Hyche. I'm going all the way.
I need to go get some Roll Tide, some old War Eagle gear out back when I was a kid, and call up some of them WDE spirits here and there for Auburn and Alabama as well, man. Look, the fact that we're even talking about this, Kevin, this is not something that you or I ever thought we'd see in either of our lifetimes. The best basketball in the country is coming through our state the last 3 or 4 years, and I think that's just really special.
Yes, as I've said, I'd love to tell the guys and gals at the Birmingham Tip-Off Club, Alabama is not just a basketball state. Right now, for all those reasons that we've talked about, Alabama is the basketball state in the United States of America.
Amen.
I rest my case, Your Honor. Bart Hyche, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Hey, tell everybody where they can catch up with you. You're doing so many things. You got so many balls in the air. How can people follow you, keep up with your work?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter all the time at bhyche22. It comes up as Hyche Hoops. I actually am on the Press Box Radio 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with Mike Grace and Colin Lacey. We have big time guests all across the country. Obviously, you're one of the best friends of the show, and you join us all the time, and we get your insight as well. But it's at Pressbox Radio 1 on Twitter. And that's we're in 6 states. I'm basically doing radio now. My basketball stuff is over. At the end of the year, the high school is kind of the end of my stuff, and I was doing South Alabama stuff until their season ended, regular season. So I'll just be on Twitter. I'll be a fan just like everybody else on the radio 3 days a week, and I will be flying out at 10:30 tomorrow night from Atlanta, heading to Raleigh. Get there at 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up, do my show, and then go get a win over the Baylor Bears.
That's the spirit. Good luck to the Bulldogs. Good luck to all the SEC teams, because this is going to be special. All right, that's going to do it for us here on Scarbo Knows Chapter 2, Sweet Hoop Alabama. Let the madness continue. Everyone.